And so, yes, welcome, bienvenidos. So this is 5 strategies to reclaim Spanish to serve your community. And I want to start by just saying felicidades, congratulations for showing up for yourself and your community. For those of you that are watching either live or that will be seeing this video in the future, for those of you that I'm working with personally, just congratulations for investing in yourself, for taking the time to want to learn and grow. And that's why you're here, right? And for, wanting to learn and grow, not just for yourself, but for your community. And that's really, really important. So just congratulations for being here. And so just so you know, we're going to also, you're going to be able to have, if you have any questions or if you want to have any comments, you'll be able to use the comment section if you want to write something in, and I will be asking you a couple of questions. So we'll be doing that shortly. So basically, I want to say, why are you here? What are you going to hear? And what are you investing your time in listening to? So I'm going to be sharing with you 5 strategies for Latinx leaders, Latino leaders, however you self-identify. How do you serve your community? And it's very simple. I think some of these strategies are based on your mindset, how to shift the way that you think about certain things, how to tell yourself a new story. But then there's also strategies that are very practical, that are tools that you can adapt and use to really do your job and do what you want and connect with your community and communicate with the community. And so what are those 5 strategies? Number 1, obviously, with anything that you do, you have to set some SMART goals. You have to embrace your story and accept it and share it. We all have different stories, and that's the beauty of it, honestly. But you have to be able to share your story and shift that story, shift the old stories that you've been telling yourself. But I think one of the most important steps to shifting that story is recognizing or realizing that your message is so much more important than any of the mistakes that you can make. And we're going to be talking a lot more about this later, and I'm going to be sharing some tips. But that's all, kind of up here in our mind. And then the second thing is also prepare based on your field. Like, what do you need to say? What do you need to communicate? You need to have goals, and you need to prepare, and you need to do the work, but then you can also have fun practicing. So I'm just going to repeat those steps. You set goals for yourself, you have a vision, you accept your story, you focus on your message, you prepare based on your field, and you have fun practicing. And so these are tips that are very simple that anyone can do, but it does take commitment. It takes commitment on your part and sometimes support, let's be honest, especially when it comes to shifting your mindset and some of the technical tools and practice. But this is all stuff that you can do on your own. And I want to just also listen from you. I'm going to see if you guys have any comments, share them. If you have any questions, I want to also ask you, what field are you in? What field do you work in? So we'll be talking about how you prepare for that field. And so now I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and share my story. And so my name is Wendy Ramirez, and I'm going to tell you why I started Spanish Sin Pena. But I grew up in LA. My family is from El Salvador. I grew up speaking Spanish when I was a little girl. I remember actually not really learning English until I got to school. But by the time that I was in high school, I had forgotten everything that I knew in Spanish, or at least it felt like I had forgotten everything. And I really struggled to communicate, to have a sentence just in Spanish. And that happened because growing up here in the US, even if our parents speak Spanish, sometimes we're always responding or answering in English. and we're just surrounded by English all the time. So I had lost all my ability to really have a conversation in Spanish. But I knew at an early age that I wanted to help my community. I wanted to be of service. I was very involved in immigration even growing up, and so that's the reason why I wanted to go to school and study and get an education, was to serve my community. And so I knew that in order to do that, I had to sound better in Spanish. I would see people doing interviews in Spanish and they would be getting stuck. And I know that they had an important message, and I knew that I needed to improve. So when I went to college, I I was studying Spanish. I was studying political science and Spanish because I thought that's the best way that I could serve my community. And I did a study abroad program in Mexico City. I love El DF. Mexico City is in my heart. Um, like I mentioned, my family's from El Salvador, but my stepdad's from Mexico. So I grew up in East LA. So I grew up very close to what I thought was Mexican culture until I actually lived in Mexico, that I became to really recognize and realize how different things are. But at the same, there's still some similarities. But one of the things was I was in Mexico City doing a study abroad program. And there was some students in my class that were Latino like me, that were, first, second generation learning Spanish, and there was people that were American learning Spanish. And I had this class with the professor. It was Latin American sociology, and she would make us read not only like Spanish, but sometimes even Portuguese. And I had a hard time reading at that level and speaking, because when we'd get to class, she would call us and ask us about the reading. And I was always so nervous. I would get so tensed up, my stomach, I was just so scared that I was going to be called on next, because she was really tough on me, and particularly on me, because I think she saw, like, when she would get to my other classmate, she would ask her a question, and my classmate would be like, no entiendo, or, and she would let her slide, but not with me. For, I was so upset at my instructor at this time, because, Mexican professor, and I'm like, why is she picking on me? Why does she keep on calling on me? I can't communicate. I can't, I'm trying. And I really felt, I don't know if you guys know what a burra or a burro is in Spanish, but that's how I felt. I felt like a burra. I mean, there's no better way to describe it. I felt dumb. That's what it means. I mean, it literally, a burro, a burra means a donkey, but in Spanish, it also means dumb, like slow, not getting something. And that's exactly how I felt, and they all, there's this term that people use for when you grow up here in the US and you try to speak, you go back to Mexico to try to speak Spanish, and they call you pocho or pocha, especially in Mexico. And so, I mean, beyond that, I felt, beyond that, I just really felt very, very ashamed at the fact that I couldn't really communicate in Spanish, and that I was being called on, or I was expected, my teacher was expecting me to speak Spanish because I was Latina, where, like other people in my situation got a pass. But now I actually appreciate how hard she was. And one of the things in that same program, I had another class that was international relations. And this is going to tell you how old I am, because this was before we were taking exams on computers. We would handwrite exams, so there was no Google, no spell check, there was nothing, like you actually just had to write out. And so we had an exam that way. And I remember I was so nervous, like just writing the exam. And then I was really afraid, just because my grammar wasn't good. I didn't know where the accents went. I'm sure that I was misspelling words, but I turned it in. And a couple of weeks later, the professor he starts basically giving a lecture to the whole class, saying, you guys are not taking this serious, you're not committed, you're not studying, I'm very disappointed. And so, I felt bad, but then he gave me my exam. And he said, well, you know what, for not speaking Spanish or for not writing Spanish, your Spanish is, you got a really good grade. And I did. I think I got a B plus or something like that. And I was just like, even though I don't know that it was a B plus. In my mind, it was a B plus because the way that they grade the systems in Mexico is different. But I was just like, oh my God, my what I have to say is more important than the mistakes that I make. And that's a lesson that I continue to learn. And even talking about this issue, I'm afraid to make mistakes. I'm afraid to get in front of people. And I'm not perfect. My Spanish is not perfect. But still, I always remind myself, my message is more important than my mistakes. And I think that that's like one of the things that you need to shift the way that you think, and that's definitely one of the strategies that I'm going to be sharing with you. But I think one of the things that's really important to ask yourself is por qué. Why is Spanish important to you personally? And I don't know if you guys have access to the chat, but if chat and tell me, send a couple of words of why Spanish is important to you personally. And, what does it mean? What does it mean um, for for how you identify and how you feel? And so it's really important to understand why, because you can then begin to work towards it. So I'm going to tell you why it's important in a broader context. Like, we all have our personal why. For me is I work in Latin America. I love Latin America. Spanish opened up so many professional doors for myself. Like, I began to be able to work in Latin America, both in politics and in fashion now as a owner of my own business. But even before, I was traveling to all the countries in Latin America and just really immersing myself in learning. And it's just this connection that I'm able to build with people that's why Spanish is important to me, because I know that it just opens up a whole new world. And so, but in a larger context, why is Spanish important today for our community? And I think a lot of people don't recognize, especially in our Latino community, that Spanish is actually the second largest native language in the world. The first is Mandarin. English, I think, comes in third. But it's incredible. There's 577 million, I think there's more than that, of people who speak Spanish in the world, and 50 million live in the US. So if you're trying to communicate with the community, if you're trying to communicate with the world, like, Spanish is very, very important. And then for us as Latino leaders now, in the political climate that we're living, it's more important than ever, because I think that our community is under attack. And if we can help and provide, if we can communicate, we can help. And that's what I keep on hearing from a lot of people. And it's just, so there's so many reasons in the context that we're living today why it's important. But what's the problem? I mean, the problem is that us as Latinos growing up in this country, or maybe, like, we lose our ability to speak Spanish for so many different reasons. I think that, it's really hard to practice, to have spaces where you could practice. So it's, like, there's a couple of different reasons. And I've thought about this, if you're second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation, a lot of the times it stems back to discrimination. Your parents were discriminated against for speaking Spanish. So then what happens? Your parents are trying to protect you, so they don't teach you Spanish. Or let's say you grow up, with parents that are immigrants that speak Spanish at home. You never went to school to learn Spanish. So your level of Spanish is going to feel very, very limited, especially if you yourself have gotten an education. So those are some of the things that are just not, that we don't think about, but are some of the obstacles or roadblocks why Spanish, why we continue to lose Spanish, and why we continue to assimilate here. And I know that there's so many so many different reasons why, and we each have our own personal story, but that it's important to just recognize that. And I just want to let everyone that's joined in know that you can definitely ask any questions in the comment section. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories as well. But so now I'm going to get into a little bit more into the strategies. And first, I want to ask you guys if you can have access to the comments, like, how many of you have ever felt ashamed for not speaking Spanish? I want you to just think about that for a minute, and let me know. Okay, I have someone saying that they've been called bocha too, but let me know, have you ever felt judged for speaking, for your ability to speak or not speak, or how you speak in Spanish? And if so, just let me know in the comments. That would be great. Also, I want to know think about who was judging you. Who do you felt judged by? And a lot of the times, the judgment that you feel comes from our own community, our own family. And I've heard that over and over. It's our own community and our own family that makes us feel bad because of the level of Spanish that we speak, or the mistakes that we make, or what we don't say, or they call you pocha, or you know, and it's hard, and it hurts. It hurts when it comes from your family, but I think you have to understand that they're coming from a place where they've probably been hurt as well, for either not speaking English, or or just in another space that they're projecting that judgment on you. And I think what you need to do in order to really take advantage and continue learning Spanish and continue is, like, really stop thinking. Well, first of all, think, what is your story? What is the story of your family with Spanish? Where did you lose it along the way? Why wasn't it passed down? Or what are the opportunities that you've had to actually practice it and improve it? So what is your personal story? And so embrace that story, accept that story. So, ¿cuál es tu historia? Here I'm going to get into Spanish so that you guys can also, para practicar también, para que podamos practicar en español también. ¿Cuál es tu historia? What is your story? Aceptar. To accept. You have to accept your own story of your struggle and of your family, why it is that you might struggle with Spanish. And you have to share, compartir. You have to share that story and say, no más pena, like, no more shame. And you have to be proud, tener orgullo de tus raíces. So be proud of, it doesn't matter if you might just know a couple of words. It doesn't matter if what level you're in. Just be proud. Be proud of, that it's something that you're trying to learn and improve, and more importantly, that you're trying to help your community. And that's your new story. So servir a la comunidad es tu nueva historia. That's your new story, rather than, like, being shamed by people telling you that you're making mistakes, or turn it around and be my message is more important than my mistakes, and who I'm here to help is more important than the judgment that I can feel by others. That's how you just begin to start shifting the way that that fear that you have of making a mistake, and start embracing your new story, that you're actually trying to learn, trying to improve, because you know how important it is, not just for you, but for your community, for the people that you serve, for your family. And yeah, no más pena, no more shame. And so the other thing, strategy number 2 that I would say is, enfócate en tu mensaje, no en tus errores. And I've repeated this, but I think that, it's so important that it's worth repeating and repeating, because especially for the people that are out there serving the community, that's your intention. So your goal is really to get your message across and to help, right? To be a resource. And so if you focus on that, if you focus on your intention and not on all the things, all the fear, all the embarrassment, all the, like that could come up, if you focus on that, you just continue going and going in that direction. But I've heard from people that what happens is that you're trying to communicate with your community and then you get stuck. There's a word that you don't know, and then all of a sudden you shut down. And I've heard a lot of my students tell me this. And one of what I say, the strategies to overcome that, when you come up and you don't know a word, there's a number of different things that you can do. Number one, obviously, it depends who you're talking to and the context, but you can start to describe what you mean, because a lot of the times why we get stuck speaking Spanish, as having grown up and gone to school here in the US, is that we want to use English words or English terms to describe something. And sometimes it doesn't exist, and sometimes it's just a word that you've never before seen in your life. And so describe it. You might know how to say it in English, but you can't think it in Spanish. So you can describe it in Spanish. You can say it in English. You could just say, no sé, pero no sé cómo se dice en español, pero en inglés es freestyle, por ejemplo. And so focus on that, like focus on just getting your message across and describe what you're trying to say. You can also ask the person that you're trying to help, or if there's someone that you're having a dialogue, if this is a dialogue, I would say then you can ask, ¿cómo se dice freestyle? No, and if the person doesn't know what freestyle is, that's when you begin to describe it. The other thing is, we all have cell phones. It's very easy to have an app where you can look for the word. I will definitely share with you all my favorite apps for when that happens, when I want to say a word and I can't think of it, I look it up and I write it down. So it's not enough to just look it up. It's like, write it down. That's going to help you remember it more. But a lot of the times is, okay, if I'm doing an interview or if I'm doing a presentation or if I'm, like live, like which one of these strategies can you use? And so either describing it or saying, and it's en inglés se dice, I think those are perfectly fine, but just keep on moving forward and focus on what is that message that you're trying to get across. And it's really your intention to help the community. And so, like those are some of the tips that you would use in cases where you feel like you get stuck and you don't know the word, is focusing on your message. And so that being said, that brings me to prepárate. ¿En qué trabajas? Where do you work? Like, what do you work? Who do you deal with? How do you help the community? In what capacity? And so, ¿cuáles palabras sabes que vas a tener que usar mucho? If you think about the community you serve and the services that you provide, then I'm sure you can think of the words that you're going to need to say in Spanish. You can prepare. And so know what are those words. And I've had students come to me as well that work in the medical field and have, on their own learned what some of the medical terms are. And so that's something very simple that anyone can do. Also, people that are in the legal field, people that are in the advocacy, world, different, like look at those words that you're going to be using a lot and begin to build that vocabulary for the community that you're serving and the services that you're providing. One easy way to take this serious and improve is to write it down. So, mantén un cuaderno o lista de palabras nuevas. You can do it. It depends on how you learn. Some people learn better when they're writing. Some people, it's a lot easier to put it on their phone, to type it. Some other people, it's a lot easier to make flashcards. whatever it is, begin to build your own dictionary of words that you need, that you don't know. So keep track of what those words are, and so that you're prepared and that you're building on that. And again, another way to prepare is if there's something that you looked up, sometimes this happens, like you've looked up a word and it doesn't really, you don't think it sounds right, or it may not capture, go to the community that you serve, go to the people in your field and ask, how would you say this? How do you say this term, this phrase? Because a lot of the times it's phrases that don't translate. And so for one of the biggest words talking about serving your community is advocacy. How do you, like, I've had so many questions on how do you say advocacy? Some people say abogacía, but that's more like, other people say pelear por los derechos o velar por los intereses. So because there, not one word in Spanish that describes what advocacy means in English. So you have to be able to know what context and how you're using it for the work that you're doing to be able to say that right phrase that describes what you do. And there's not, once you're prepared and you have this and you can review it and you can always go back to it. If you have to go out there and talk to the community, it's good to look over this. If you have an interview that you're doing, if you have a presentation that you're giving, this is all going to help you. Just be prepared and not feel so that you don't get stuck and shut down and feel like you can't communicate. Anything is learnable. And so it takes me to, what is your goal? So you're preparing because you have a goal in mind. What is that? And it's like, let's visualize. I would say take a moment to visualize, like, okay, why, in what circumstances, in what capacity do you need to communicate with the people that you serve? And your goal has to be specific. Like, what is it? Is it, do you want to be able to register people maybe to vote, register people for the census, give legal advice? What is it that you want to be able to do? Like, what is your goal? You have to be specific. Then how are you, can you reach that goal? Se puede alcanzar. Achievable. Can you achieve that goal? You have to ask yourself, is this something that I can do? And believe me, I think anyone, it doesn't matter what level you're in, you can, like, you can set a goal for yourself and you can achieve it, but it's also a matter of how much time is it going to take you? How much time are you giving yourself to achieve this goal? Like, have that in mind. And also, how are you going to measure? How are you going to say, okay, I think I've gotten to where I wanted to be? Is it maybe your measurement could be, is it okay, now I can do this on my own without my coworker having to translate for me? Now I can have these conversations with my family without my husband having to be there, or some of those things. That's like, what is the goal that you have? Be specific, and how do you measure it, and how do you reach it? So the other thing that I say is that even though you set goals for yourself, aprender español es de toda la vida. And I say that because literally there's so many different countries in Latin America, and so many different regions within those countries where people say different things, different phrases. They have different vocabulary words for the same thing. Like, for example, I was just in Peru, and we all know what an aguacate is. At least most of us know aguacate is an avocado, but in Peru, it's palta. And so you can always continue to learn and continue to grow. And I continue to learn and I continue to grow. And I'm confident. I am confident in my Spanish. I help other people learn Spanish, but sometimes I also, you know, that those old stories come up of my insecurities, but I switch it and I say like more, this is something that I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to learn new things, to learn new words, to learn new phrases, to increase my vocabulary, to be able to communicate more effectively. And yes, you know, like, or you're gonna learn, you know, Spanish is something that you can be curious and continue to grow and learn, but it's great to have specific goals that you can achieve that keep you moving forward. Um, so the other thing that's really, really important is to think of your plan. Like you have a goal. Now you need a plan, right? What is your plan? How, you know, because everything, it is possible for you to reach that goal, but you're not going to be able to reach it if you don't have a plan. So the first thing that I always, when I work with students, I tell them like, I ask them a bunch of questions and I'm like, let's identify what opportunities you have in your life, in your current situation, in your busy day-to-day life, because a lot of the people I'm talking to are professionals that are working with the community. Is what are those opportunities you have to practice? And some people have a lot of opportunities and some people don't. Like some people, you know, they have family, they have people at work, and some people don't ever really get an opportunity to interact. So if you have opportunities, it's how do you take advantage of those opportunities that you have and make it consistent? And if you don't have opportunities, is how do you create those? How do you create your own opportunities to be able to practice and learn and grow from someone else? And it's really important that you don't give up. No te des por vencido. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be uncomfortable. Things are gonna come up, but you just continue to move forward and continue to tell yourself, my message is more important than my mistakes. You know, like, I'm curious, I want to learn, I'm here to serve my community, that's my intention. And that's what's driving me to learn and to practice. And then the last thing that I like, my personal approach to the way that I work with students is that you have to make it fun. And we all know that when you're laughing, when you're having fun, you let your guard down and you allow that learning to come in. And also when you're doing something that's fun, when you're doing something that's passionate, that you have passion for, it's also when you forget about the mistakes that you're going to make and you just dive into it, you just jump in that water. And definitely I think that it's something that you can do it, that you can have fun, that you can take away all that pain and shame and judgment that comes from being Latino and struggling to speak Spanish for whatever the reason that you have, and you just make it fun. You make it fun and enjoyable and you fit it to your life, but you need a plan. You need a plan in order to do that. So one of the questions that I have for you guys, for you to think, and if you want to share them in the comments, that'd be great as well, is what are some of the strategies that you have that you can put into place in order to practice? What are those opportunities that you either have or that you can create in order to continue to practice and improve your Spanish? And um, yeah, like I'm going to share just a little bit of what people have been. Porque here I have a comment on, personally, Spanish connects me to my ancestors and my roots. My parents came to this country and my parents came to this country and assimilated and over assimilated over a point of time. And so it's cultural identity. Yes, you know, that's one of the things that's very common for Latinos that are learning Spanish, is that there's just this emotional connection to the language because it's part of our identity. And so I'm also going to ask you guys to just share, like, what are some of the ways that you can practice? Some of the ways for me to practice that are fun is always I'm always watching Netflix shows in Spanish. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes I like to watch Netflix shows from other countries to hear different accents. Obviously, traveling is a big part of and immersing yourself. There's no better way to really delve into than traveling, listening to podcasts, listening to stories, and then just like having a fun day. We've been working to create these opportunities to just practice and practice, because we have to recognize that we don't really have these opportunities to practice here, that a lot of us don't have to create them, and so you have to get creative in the way that you can practice and make it fun for yourself. I also love to watch comedy in Spanish. I watch YouTube videos in Spanish, how to do certain things. And so those are some of the ideas on how to practice and some of the strategies that you can have. And so I'm also going to invite you guys, if you feel very committed that this is something that's very important for you, that's not important for you, but it's also important for the community, and you're committed and invested in this, I do have a Leaders Academy that's actually starting next week. We have a few more spots left, but it's basically accountability, right? Structure and accountability. And we're creating those opportunities to practice as well in a fun way and also flexible. And I'm really excited, especially if I have any of my students listening. I'm really excited just to support you in this journey. And my intention really is, how can I support you? How can I get you to reach your goal? How can I get you there so that you can be serving our community, so that you can be communicating with our community? So you can apply for this program. Like I said, there's only a few spots left. You can apply on our website at SpanishSinPena.com. We also if you follow us in if you follow us on social media, you can also go to our Instagram account. You can send me a message. But like I said, we only have a few spots left, and we're already starting next week. And if this is something that you really think you need for you and you're committed and you're ready to start, I would invite you to apply. If you're unsure, or if you just want to talk about what can you do? What's your personal strategy? What's your personal goal and what's your personal strategy? And you need more support in just figuring that out, I'm also happy to give that to you. You can text 44999 and set up a 30-minute session with me. I only have a few spots left, and I'm only doing this for like one more week. So if you want to just chat with me and talk about what are you already doing, like what are those opportunities that you have to practice, what do you need it for, how can you prepare yourself, I'm happy to do that. And or whether or not also this program that we have would be a good fit for you, because that's what we're looking. We're looking for people that it would be a good fit for. I'm happy to also talk to you. But like I said, at the end of the day, my goal is just to support you, to get your message out, to feel confident speaking Spanish, to get there out there in the community. El español es muy hermoso. Me encanta hablar español. Me encanta enseñar. Me encanta compartir. Y me encanta ayudar. I want to serve you because I consider you part of my community. So I would invite you to do that. Also, just I'm gonna send a list of resources. I know that I mentioned the app that I use to look up words. I mentioned some of the Netflix shows that I like to watch, and some of the podcasts and all of that. So I'm gonna create a list. I also have a list of vocabularies that are really hard to translate depending on different fields that you're in. So I have all those resources that I want to share with you. I want to share with everyone that's in the community. So if you signed up for this webinar, we have your email and we'll be sending that to you. We'll also send you the link for our program if that's something that you're interested in, want to apply. And we'll be sending all that to you, but we'll, stay connected. We are not going to send you spam. We're going to try to send you stuff that's useful and helpful. And like I said, our intention is to support you. You can follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and Twitter at Spanish Sin Pena. And yes, and so now I'm going to take questions, comments. I want to hear from you. I'm going to stay on just to answer all your questions and comments. And so let me see what some of you guys have been writing in. So some of the comments are, I try to read books in Spanish, watch the news shows and movies in Spanish, listen to Spanish music. I also try to be intentional when I speak Spanish at home, especially since my husband is also first generation and speaks little Spanish. So small everyday conversations, but in Spanish versus English, La Casa de las Flores is one of my favorite Spanish shows on Netflix. Yes, yes, yes. I definitely, La Casa de las Flores is on my list of resources to watch. And yeah, I think that, you do have to be intentional about the things that you do. And I love it. I love this. Thank you for sharing, Marilyn. And also one of the other comments that we have is I try to have check-ins at work in Spanish, listen to Spanish music, set up dinners with my family and only speak Spanish, which is fun too. Follow Spanish pages on Instagram. So those are awesome tips. Other things, those are things that you can do. I think music, I love music, anything, so I think that's why we also have to understand that like Spanish is so tied to our culture and our identity, our music, our food. So another thing that I always give tips for is, for example, watch YouTube videos in Spanish of things that you enjoy. If it's, or even again, Netflix, whatever, like listen to that, consume content in Spanish on social media, doing some of those things is really what's going to help you up level your Spanish. And it's so possible, to do. So I just want to say, thank you very much for joining us. And, this is kind of one of the first webinars that we're doing. But again, let us know how we can be supportive to you. How to, again, I think that there's enough shame that has gone on and that we need to stop that and we need to start changing the conversation. So one of the questions that we have is, how do we encourage other family members to speak more Spanish and be proud of speaking the language? I think one of the best ways to encourage people is to do it yourself. And it's so cliche and catchy when they say change begins with you, but it's so true, because this is the thing. Like, I'll share a story of one of my students, and who was a teacher and wanted to speak Spanish in order to help her students, because her students all came from, well, she wanted to help her students and she needed to communicate with their parents who only spoke in Spanish. And so we started working, and she would go back and she would just be telling everyone, speak to me in Spanish. Everyone that spoke Spanish in her school, she was like, speak to me in Spanish, speak to me in Spanish. So that's one of the ways, like, you can't make your family, you can't make other people um, be proud of speaking Spanish or start speaking Spanish. What you can do is you can start yourself, and you can ask people to help you in that process. And so she went around and she asked everyone, and she was practicing and she felt really good. So back to school night, she's able to give her presentation in Spanish to the parents. And she's very proud of that. But what was really, to me, what was really important that she said was that she told the parents, like, continue to speak Spanish to your children. Don't let them forget it. It's something that's valuable. I, as an adult now myself, I'm learning Spanish. And, she said that the parents were just completely shocked at the fact that here she was, the teacher of their children, telling them that Spanish was something that was valuable, because they had never seen it that way. They've always, as with the immigrant experience, you think like English, speak English, we need to learn English, we need to assimilate. And we forget the value that speaking Spanish has, not just for ourselves, for our community, but just even for us professionally. But it was the first time for her, for the parents, it was the first time that someone was telling them that their language was valuable. And that, that shocked me, because that's the climate that we live in right now, where we don't value Spanish. We see it as, we've been conditioned to see it as kind of, we need to assimilate, we need to speak English, that's the language of this country. But there are so many opportunities if you do speak Spanish. So it's something that we do need to be proud of, and that we can show other people by example. If we take it upon ourselves to learn, to want to be curious, to not worry about our mistakes, and if we're comfortable, get comfortable making mistakes. Get comfortable using the wrong tense, but know what you want to say, and then be committed to improving. Because if you know you're making a mistake, don't continue to make the same mistake over and over. Ask people, did I say it right? Did I not? Is this the way you say it? So don't be afraid of making those mistakes. Continue to make those mistakes and just move forward. Like, and Jackie's saying, uncomfortable equals growth. Yes, in order to grow, you're going to feel that uncomfortableness. And maybe, for a lot of people, it's in different ways. Some people's a pronunciation, am I pronouncing this right? Like, if, depending on how important it is to you, I would say get the support that you need. And not just from me, but from anywhere else. Again, I think that for me, this is something that's important for me personally, and I want to share with everyone. But there's so many resources out there, and I'm a big advocate of use every resource that's out there that can help you improve and better your Spanish. Use it, and I bring in all those tools into what I share with the people that I work with and the students that I'm helping support. Because there's so many things out there now. We have the internet and we just have access, and we can learn and we can improve. It's just getting, shifting our mindset, getting outside of that mentality of like, I'm so scared of making a mistake. I'm scared of the judgment. I'm scared, like that I just get frustrated because I can't really communicate as fast as I can in English. Why can't we just do this in English? Like, no, get curious, be open, understand that there might be a struggle at first, depending on, and it doesn't really matter what level you're in, because you can always up level. If you don't know anything, you can start with very basic stuff. If you are advanced, you can continue to practice and professionalize your Spanish. How do you practice? How do you speak it in your field, in the work that you do, for the community that you serve? I think those were some of the main tips that I shared with everyone today, that I hope are helpful. And let me know. Again, I'm always, my I see it as my job really is, how can I help people? How can I help you? How can I help you get the resources that you need, get the practice that you need, get the support that you need in speaking Spanish? Because how can we, this is who we are, this is our culture, this is our identity, and it's very important. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute all of you and let you ask any questions that you have, anything specific. So if anyone has any questions, I would ask you, what's one of the biggest things or biggest takeaways that you take from what I've shared with you? Is there anything that was helpful? Because again, like I said, my intention is to give you the support and the help that you need. So if there's anything that I've said or anything that I didn't say that you think would be helpful for you to really begin to get comfortable and confident speaking Spanish, even if you're making mistakes, and what's going to help you better serve your community. any resources that you need. Okay.
Hey, this is Jackie. I could start.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I know one thing that I've learned from the workshops and going through the program is that the power of sharing your story and just letting people know that, I'm going to do this presentation in Spanish, but I am practicing and working on my Spanish. And so when I tell them that and let them know that it is something I'm working on reclaiming, I immediately feel like instead of judgment, I get received with empowerment and I get more like um, just more support. And so feeling that energy and feeling it change, and it just is really helpful for me. And even throughout the presentation or the conversation, it makes me more comfortable asking like, what's this word mean? Or I don't know how to say this. And then giving that feedback even comes back nicer because they know where I'm at and they're meeting me there. So that's really
Yes. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. Yes, definitely. And that's, kind of why we started Spanish sin pena, without shame, is for that particular reason. Like, there's a lot of shame around speaking Spanish or not speaking Spanish or making mistakes. And what Jackie's saying is, if you put it out there, like, how do you get rid of shame? You share it. If you put it out there and you tell people about it, then you take away that pressure of, you know, having to be perfect. And that's it. So it's really important to do that. And sometimes it might be uncomfortable when you first try to just share that you're just learning and that you might make mistakes, but continue to practice it. And everything with practice is going to get much better. I know that I'm going to get much better at supporting you at, the resources that I have to offer through practice, doing this webinar, doing other trainings. And so, yes, practice, and don't be ashamed of wherever you're at, where you're starting at. But thank you, Jackie. Thank you for sharing that. And if there's not any more questions or comments, I'm just gonna continue to invite you again. For those of you that maybe joined us a little late, is I'm gonna again tell you that we want to serve as a resource to you. We're going to send out a list of resources, and continue to just think of how we can serve you. And for those of you that are committed and want to just discuss your own personal story, maybe you're not comfortable sharing it in a group yet, I'm here to listen to you. I have a few sessions left. I always love connecting with people and just hearing the stories. I've talked to people from all over the country, and I guess the biggest message that I take from that is you're not alone, because there's so many people that have such similar stories and are sharing that and just share their struggles. And so you're not alone. But if you're not comfortable, sharing that story with a group, I'm here to just, listen and help guide you and give you any strategies that I think would be helpful. And then the last thing that I do want to mention for those of you that joined us is that we do have a program. We might have a couple of the people enrolled in our program that are listening to this webinar, but we're really trying to structure something that's for busy professionals that are really committed and really don't, really need the practice and want some type of accountability in order to grow and to up level their Spanish. And so we're really excited about our Leadership Academy that's starting next week. It's still not too late to apply. You can definitely apply for the program. And but it's looking at the strategies that I mentioned in this presentation and how do they apply to you personally, and how do we support you putting those strategies into place and see your growth, and and see you get to your goal. It's basically what we're trying to create for everyone. So I just want to say thank you to everyone that joined us live. Thank you to everyone that might be watching this afterwards. And feel free to reach out. We're here. We want to start this conversation. Let's not be ashamed to speak in Spanish anymore. Vamos a hablar Spanish sin pena. Vamos a practicar. Vamos a continuar creciendo. Vamos a continuar aprendiendo. Y muchas gracias, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this and to want to improve. And thank you for serving our community. Thank you for the work that you do. and for the way that you show up for our community and for the help that you provide. So it's been great. Ciao.